The mop made a soft whisper along the marble floor when he heard it, a word like a bridge back to a life he'd buried. Above, behind glass so clear it looked like water, a quiet voice spoke Japanese, then faltered. In that tremble, the single father cleaning the floors felt something split open in his chest. The old language, the old ache, and the kind of courage only hunger and love can give a man rose up in him like a tide. Before we begin, if this kind of story speaks to your heart, feel free to share where you're watching from. It's always beautiful to see how far stories like this can travel. Enjoy the story. Chapter 1, Marble and Milk. Noah Reed's mornings were measured in small economies. Half a cup of milk stirred into his coffee so his daughter could have the rest. A stack of folded coupons on the refrigerator. A grocery list written in his careful block letters. He was 34, built of long shifts and late nights, and he lived in an apartment the size of the school gym he waxed every Thursday. He woke to the sound of Maya's little feet and the scrape of her chair across the kitchen tile. She was 5, all breathless questions and gap-toothed grins. She had drawn stars on his lunch bag. "Do the floors in your building have stars?" she asked around a mouthful of cereal. Noah smiled. "They're shy stars, only come out if you look real close." She squinted at him, serious. "You should show them." He thought of the marble lobby at Danvers & Co., of the way it held the sky in its polished shine, of the fingerprints he swiped away before the executives arrived. He imagined leading his daughter across that floor, pointing out how every light was a star if you wanted it to be. He imagined a life where he didn't have to imagine. "Maybe one day," he said, and kissed her forehead, tasting shampoo and hope. While Maya packed crayons into her backpack, he checked his phone. No overdue notices. Not yet. His thumb hovered over the photo of her mother, Lena, with her dark hair pushed behind one ear, one hand shading her eyes against the Kyoto sun. He turned the phone face down. The line between yesterday and today was tender enough as it was. By 6, he was in the service elevator, alone with his mop and the smell of lemon disinfectant. The elevator climbed, floor numbers blinked from amber to sapphire. The lobby was a cathedral of glass and marble. Outside, the city was still a sketch, the buildings only hints of the day they'd become. He set his bucket down, dipped the mop, began. He liked this hour, before everyone, before anyone. He liked the way the building breathed in the early morning, the hum of the lights, the empty chairs waiting like patient horses. He took the entrance first, then the hall to the conference rooms, bracing himself for the day's first irritation. The red scuffs of expensive heels, the coffee rings, the broken privacy seals on glass. There was talk among the cleaning crew that the CEO from Tokyo would be visiting today. "Quiet one," Benny from night maintenance had said with a smirk. "You know the type. Doesn't say a word but sees everything. We're supposed to pretend we don't exist extra hard." Rosa, the shift supervisor, had tossed a rag at Benny. "Shut your mouth and do your job. And you, Reed, don't get poetic with the floors today, just keep it moving." Noah had smiled. He kept his poetry to himself the way he kept his past, folded up, tucked away in the pocket of his work shirt. He finished the hall and pushed the bucket toward the elevators. His reflection tracked him in the marble, an elongated ghost rowing a shallow sea. The doors opened. He nudged the bucket in, leaned against the wall, and watched the floors tick by. Law, media, tech, executive. The doors parted onto a different world. The carpet was thick. The air smelled like money, expensive cologne, coffee ground by machines that cost more than his rent, paper with texture like linen. The reception desk gleamed. A young woman with tight curls and a silver ring through her septum glanced up and said, "Morning, Noah." "Hey, Ollie," he said, and tried not to look tired. She lowered her voice. "They're already in the big room. Chief Financial Cantor has been pacing. There's a translator with the CEO. It's like tense. "Cantor," Noah echoed. "Stan Whitaker is out at some investor breakfast. It's his second in command, the finance one we call Cantor because she's always lecturing people about the way things are supposed to work." Ollie's eyes darted toward the glass-walled boardroom. "You ever get that feeling something important is about to break, like a wishbone?" All the time, he thought, but he only said, "I'll be quick," and slid his bucket past. Through the glass, he saw a long table with bodies arranged like chess pieces. He saw the CFO, gray suit like armor, jaw a straight line, finger tapping a laptop as if in reprimand. He saw a man with wire-frame glasses, Danvers himself. He saw 3 people in Danvers blue, and at the far end he saw the CEO. She was smaller than he'd imagined, her black suit cut like a whisper. Her hands were folded. Her hair was pinned back, a single strand falling like a punctuation mark. Her face was both delicate and unreadable. She might have been 35 or 50, she might have been a painting. She looked, Noah thought, like someone who had made a practice of listening. The translator, a thin man in his 20s with a nervous tie, sat at her shoulder. He was pale with concentration. He had the breathless look of someone trying to keep hold of a kite in a gust. Noah paused. He kept his eyes low. He dipped the mop. He didn't mean to hear anything. But Japanese, when it happens under your skin, doesn't need your permission. Chapter 2, The Quiet One. Rumors had made a myth of her. Eiko Takahashi, the Shosha Group's quiet CEO. They said she had been a prodigy who preferred silence over spectacle, the kind of leader who did not interrupt a room but altered its temperature by entering. They said she wrote letters by hand. They said she had refused 6 mergers because the numbers were loud and the people behind them were not. Noah had learned her name 2 weeks ago in the break room under a paper sign about microwaving fish. He had said nothing then, just washed his spoon and watched greasy rainbows swirl in the sink. He had a rule about Japanese things: do not draw the line back. It only hurts. But Japanese was not a rule to him. It was a world. He'd slept in it once, dreamed in it, loved a woman in it. It was blue-tinged memories of summer cicadas and train announcements, and the way Lena's voice had softened when she told him stories about her grandmother in Kyoto teaching her to fold cranes. He was still telling himself not to listen when he heard the way Takahashi-san said "sumimasen," the subtle apology that meant she was about to disagree. The translator spoke for her. His English was smooth, but there were cracks. He flattened her tone. He used okay in places where there had been perhaps. Noah felt the hairs rise on his arm. I'm sorry, the CFO was saying. Our Q3 projections have you at a loss if we don't shift manufacturing. These are realities, Miss Takahashi. The translator murmured in Japanese, Teiko suru to Katoshi no shiji wa tokubetsu desu. Noah flinched. It wasn't quite right. He'd said, if I may contradict, this year's index is special. It had been a strange hybrid of politeness and misstep, like a broken bow. Takahashi-san replied in a stretch of clipped syllables. Hontoni su iu genjitsu desu ka, are those truly the realities? The CFO smiled in a way that would have made a dog cringe. We're aligned on the overall picture. The details can be ironed out. The translator inhaled. His hands were shaking. Wadashitachi wa zenpan teki nai onaji nai, he stopped. He rephrased. We are the same in the big. Noah's mop squeaked. He hated that sound. It always seemed to announce him as if the building were trying to crumple him up like paper. The CEO leaned back. She watched the translator the way one watches a leaf try to stay on a branch in a storm. Maybe we should take a break, the CFO said smoothly, eyes flicking toward the door like a hawk checking the fence line. Let's get coffee. Reset. The translator nodded with relief. He rose too quickly, knocked his notebook off the table. Pages skittered. He scrambled. Noah was already in motion. It could have been reflex or fate. He set the mop against the wall. He reached the door at the same moment the translator did. He held it open. Arigato, the young man whispered without looking up. Do itashimashite, Noah said before he could stop himself, his mouth forming the words like a muscle remembering a dance. The translator's head snapped up. His eyes spread in surprise, then relief. Anata wa Nihongo ga wakaru. You understand Japanese? Noah froze. The translator's tie was askew. His face, already pale, went white as paper. He glanced past Noah's shoulder to the CFO, who was watching them with a smile like a closed fist. In the boardroom, the CEO unfolded her hands. Noah had a split second to decide. He pictured rent. He pictured Rosa's warning, keep it moving. He pictured Maya's small fingers pinching cranes out of paper. He let go of the door. He stepped into the boardroom. Chapter 3, the word he should have knocked. He should have backed away. He should have remembered who he was in this building, invisible until someone wondered how the trash had emptied itself. But the word wakemasu was in his throat, and it lit the fuse that led all the way back to the man he had been. I'm sorry, Noah said to the room at large, and then to the quiet woman at the head of the table very carefully in Japanese, sumimasen. Asorerimasu ga. Excuse me, I'm terribly sorry, but the translator went rigid. The CFO smile retreated like a tide, leaving sharp stones. Danvers looked as though someone had told him his car could talk. The CEO tilted her head. Her gaze, which had been neutral in the way of winter water, sharpened. She took him in, uniform, bucket, mop, the calluses on his hands, probably the scuffed toe of his work boot where the steel had nearly worn through. She said in a tone no one in that room had yet heard from her, Dozo, please. Noah felt every word before it left his mouth. He didn't step further in. He didn't move as if the slightest wrong motion would shatter this. He said, voice low, I think your translator meant to say Yasen for budget, not Shiji for market support, and when you asked if these were the realities, he softened it. You asked directly. You deserve a direct answer. The translator made a sound like a swallowed sob. He began to speak, to apologize, to rearrange himself into usefulness. The CFO chair scraped. Who is this? She demanded. The CEO held up a hand. She did it the way one opens an umbrella, not with impulse but with intent. She replied in Japanese, smooth as river stone, unhurried. Shitsure desu ga anata no nami wa, forgive me, but what is your name? It had been years since someone had used that form of soft respect with him. It pierced him where armor didn't reach. Noah Reid, he said in English. Then in Japanese, because he could not stop himself, because it was like inching closer to a fire on a cold night, Reid Tamashimasu. My name is Reid. In-house, Danvers asked, perplexed. I don't remember you from, he shouldn't be in here, the CFO snapped. Security's gotten sloppy, Ollie, her voice cracked down the hall like a whip. Where is security? The CEO did not turn. She watched Noah as if he had not stepped into her meeting but through a doorway she had been waiting to appear. Reid-san, she said softly, Nihongo ga jazu desu. Your Japanese is excellent, Noah swallowed. He began, then corrected himself, old habits waking one by one. Mata mata desu, no, far from it. Her mouth tilted, not quite a smile. Kekayoku, she said, still in Japanese, with a glance at the CFO, I was told your company has no one who speaks our language. Most of us studied Spanish in high school, Danvers joked weakly, but the joke fell to the carpet and lay there. The CFO glared. This is a sensitive meeting. We can't have, perhaps sensitivity, the CEO said, switching to English with a precision that made it feel like a favor, would be best served by accuracy. Noah could feel his heart beating like a trapped bird. He could feel the weight of what he was doing. He glanced to the translator, who looked like he might faint with the relief of not being solely responsible for the bridge between these two worlds. Watashi wa, Noah began. He didn't finish, because the CFO slammed her laptop closed. This is outrageous. Who let him in here? Ollie rushed in, cheeks flushed. Ma'am, the CEO, who had not raised her voice at any point, said, stay. Then, to Noah in Japanese, if you would, Reid-san, tell me, was I being told the truth? Don't protect anyone, I am asking you. He looked at her and saw that she meant it. He looked at the CFO and saw the first flicker of fear. He thought of how much it costs to be honest in the wrong room. He thought of Maya's paper cranes. And then he spoke. He explained in English where the translator had softened, where the CFO realities were preferences said with the swagger of inevitability. He repeated the CEO questions without varnish, often prefacing with she asked exactly this. He did not interpret. He carried words across the gap like precious cargo, trying not to spill any. It took minutes. It felt like hours. When he finished, the room was a different temperature. Ollie leaned her hip against the frame, holding very still. Danvers looked like he had woken up near a cliff. The CFO knuckles were white. Takahashi-san said quietly, arigato, thank you. She bowed her head a fraction, the respect precise enough to make Noah want to cry. Someone cleared their throat at the door, security, 2 guards in black. You called, one asked the CFO. It was a single second, a hinge. Noah stepped back. The CEO said in crisp English that cut cleanly through the room, please wait, this gentleman will not be removed, we are not finished. It shocked everyone the way her voice, quiet until now, rolled out like soft thunder. Even the guards paused. Ollie did not hide her smile, the CFO eyes went sharp. Fine, then we break, she said, and swept from the room like a weather front. The CEO rose with a soft rustle. 2 minutes, she said to Danvers, who nodded as if he'd forgotten how to do anything else. She then walked around the table to stand in front of Noah. Up close, he saw the pearl in her ear was not white, but the faint pink of dawn. She looked at him in a way that was not curiosity exactly, nor gratitude, but something gentler and more dangerous, recognition. Reid-san, she said, have we met? He shook his head. I don't think so. She nodded once, as if filing that away in a place she would return to. Then in Japanese, very softly so that only he and perhaps the translator could hear, Shinu made Atasan wa Atasan desu. Until we die, a father is a father, he stared at her. Anata wa, he began. Her eyes flicked to the security guards, to Ollie, to the CFO empty chair. She said only, will you meet me later? Not here. She slid a small card into his hand. He felt the embossed weight, a time, a floor, a room number. Then she returned to the head of the table and became again the quiet CEO, the winter water, the person whose silence could move a room. Chapter 4, the line back. Noah hid in the bathroom, the door locked, heart punching at his ribs. He set the mop against the sink and leaned his forehead to the cool metal of the stall. He had been careful for years not to step on anything that might draw the line back to who he'd been before. He had cut away words. He had thought silence would save him. When Lena died, he had been 28 and shapeable. He had been in Kyoto with her, in a small apartment with tatami mats that creaked when he crossed them, the smell of tea rising like steam between them. He had learned Japanese because he had fallen in love with a woman who dreamed in it, but also because it made his head feel clean, like washing with river water. Lena had liked to say he folded language the way she folded cranes, precise and with long fingers. He had not come home right after the accident. He had stayed and gathered their life into boxes while her mother folded into grief like someone who knew precisely how to do it and had not wanted to. He had printed forms and signed papers and sat in rooms full of solemn men who spoke quietly and exactly, and he had understood enough to know how small he was and how big the loss was. When he left Japan, he left himself there on purpose. Now the line was drawn back. He had stepped on it. He had dragged the past into this building like a wet coat. 2 knocks on the door. Noah, Ollie's voice soft. You okay? He wiped his face with the back of his hand. Yeah, Maya called the desk, Ollie said. I told her you were in a meeting. He could hear the smile in her voice. You got a fancy card in your hand, because if you don't, I will riot. He laughed, shocked by the sound. I do. Good, because Cantor looks like she wants to feed you to the copy machine. Maybe go out the long way, and maybe don't go to lunch where you always go. A pause. You don't have to do this, you know. You don't owe them your story. I know, he said. He did not know anything. He was late to his own life. The walk-in refrigerator of the small kitchen was too cold. The hallway was too bright. The floor he'd just polished felt like ice. Rosa intercepted him by the service elevator. What did you do? She hissed. He held up his hands. I don't know yet. Security called me, she said. If we get in trouble, your hours are on the line. He put a hand to his chest to see if his heart was still there. It was a mistake, he said. But in his pocket, the thin square of the CEO card warmed against his thigh like a secret. Chapter 5. Paper birds and teeth. He worked the rest of the morning with a second pair of eyes, the kind that checks every corner in case someone is waiting there with scissors. He finished the executive floor early and took the slow elevator down to 13, where the legal team had turned their hall into a white paper ocean. He passed conference rooms with names like Lake and Vine. He mopped a kitchenette where someone had left a lemon half on a plate, seeds spilling like tiny moons. He left at noon to pick up Maya, even though the card in his pocket had a time that would require him to come back. They walked home under a city sky that had finally filled itself in. Maya's hand was hot in his. She stopped at a bakery and pressed her nose to the window. They look like rabbits, she announced. They're croissants. Croiss rabbits, she decided firmly. He bought one because it was an ordinary joy and he didn't trust the extraordinary ones. They sat on a bench. He watched her tear flakes off with her soft, purposeful fingers. Daddy, she said, angelically weaponized. Yes. Can we make more cranes tonight? You said if we get to 1,000 a magic thing happens. He smiled. Teiko Suru, he told her without thinking. She frowned. Is that yes? No, he said. It's resisting. I've been resisting. Sorry. He pressed his fingers to his temples. He was tired enough for language to slide. You can say no in English, she said sternly and offered him a Croiss rabbit ear. He took it. He chewed. He asked himself what his life would look like if he chose to step into it fully. He asked himself if he would regret not going tonight, meeting the woman behind the card. He thought of Maya's cranes, multicolored, creeping across their living room like a tide. Tell me a Japan story, Maya said, but the short one. He told her the one about the vending machine that sold hot coffee in cans, and how he had burned his mouth trying to drink it, because he had not believed coffee could be hot inside a cold aluminum thing. He told her how Lena had laughed until she cried and then had gently slapped his hand, the one holding the can, and said, Ai no baka. Fool of love. It was exactly the kind of story that hurt and healed at the same time. They folded cranes when they got home. By the time he had to go, the living room had 33 birds along the window. Maya held one up to the light. Look, stars. He kissed her face until she squealed. Ollie will call if she needs anything, he told Rosa, who had agreed to watch her for the hour. I won't be long. You better not, Rosa said, pointing a spoon at him like a weapon. And you better not get ideas. I won't, he said. He had already gotten them. Chapter 6. The 6th floor. The room number on the card was a small conference room with no window and a view of an interior atrium. The kind of room where secrets went to sit and warm themselves like cats. Eiko Takahashi was there when he arrived. She wore a different suit, a darker shade, and he thought of how each costume belongs to a particular scene. She stood when he came in. She did not offer her hand. She bowed a fraction. He bowed back because you do not unlearn respect without losing something essential. She gestured. He sat. He placed his hands, palms down, on the table. He thought of the way he had watched men do this in Japan, the way the body speaks honesty in rooms like this. "Thank you for coming," she said in English. He nodded, aware of the absurdity of his uniform in this space, of the way his knees almost touched the table because the chairs were built for smaller men. "I'm sorry," he said. "For the way I came into the meeting, it was inappropriate." "You were respectful," she said. "You apologized." A beat. "You believed a truth would be lost." He eyed the camera in the corner. She followed his gaze. "It's on," she said. "They always are." He felt a flush. He had no language for being this visible. "Raid-san," she said gently. "Would you tell me where you learned Japanese?" He told her. He did not tell her everything. He gave her the outline, the college classes, the semester abroad, the internship plan that had turned into a job, into a life, into 3 winters and 2 summers, and a woman named Lena he had believed meant the world had briefly decided to give him everything. He did not tell her about the hospital in Kyoto, the way the walls made their own kind of silence. He did not tell her about writing Lena's name over and over on the death certificate, because the D took the place of the kana, and it felt wrong. He did not tell her about the way he had carried his daughter through airport security, like he would not put her down ever again because he was not sure the ground would hold. She listened. If she knew he was not saying the most important thing, she did not press. Instead, she said, "I recognized your accent." He blinked. "My accent?" "There is Kyoto in it," she said. "Many Americans learn Tokyo Japanese. You have Kyoto's music." Lena's mother had said that once, taken his hand and said, "Ashioto no oto ga yasashii." "The sound of your footsteps is gentle." He swallowed. "Takahashi-san," he said, about the translator. He was struggling, but he was not malicious. "I know," she said. "He is very young. He is afraid. He has probably been told." She searched for the word and found it with the precision she always did, that it is not good to make waves. "That's an art form," Noah said, and then flinched, surprised at his own boldness. Her eyes warmed. "I wanted to see if you would come," she said. "Most people who hold 2 worlds hide one." He thought of Meyer at the window with her cranes. "Sometimes it's safer." "Yes," she said, "but not always better." He had not expected to be seen. He had not planned for it. He had spent years practicing invisibility. Now someone was looking directly at him, not with pity, not with rescue, but with an invitation. She glanced at the camera again. "Reed-san," she said, voice softer, "I have a selfish question. In your language, your heart language, how do you say the thing you think in the moments when you are sure you cannot do something but you try anyway?" He thought. He heard Lena's voice. He heard his own on nights when Maya coughed and he sat with his hand on her back counting her breaths. He said, "Shikata ga nai maybe, there's no other way, or ganbat, do your best, keep going." She nodded. "My mother used to say, it is not about loud. It is about long." She said, "You keep going so quietly that people think you are standing still. When they look again, you are already somewhere else." He smiled. She slid a folder across the table. "I have been told your CFO intends to recommend we move manufacturing to a supplier with a reputation for cutting labor costs in ways that should not be cut. I want accurate information. Would you be able to translate the details, only the language, not the intention?" He thought of Rosa's spoon pointed at him. He thought of rent. He thought of how far you can stretch yourself before you break. "I'm a janitor," he said softly. "You are also a father," she said, "and a bridge." He set his palm on the folder. It was heavier than it should have been. "I could help tonight," he said, "after my shift, just to catch up." "You should be paid for the helping," she said. He looked at her and understood a little that her quiet was not absence but calibration. She chose the register of the world and made the rest of them tune to it. "Okay," he said. "Then I'll help." "Arigato," she said, and this time when she inclined her head it was not the precise fraction of before but a small, human bow. "We will do it my mother's way," she added. "We will be quiet for a long time. And then we will be somewhere else." Chapter 7, The Angle of Vengeance. He worked faster than he ever had, buoyed by the clean light of a task that was not mopping. At 8 he called Rosa and told her he'd be late. "The CEO asked me to translate something," he said. "The what?" Rosa demanded. "You're going to get us all fired." "She's paying me," he said. It's okay." He hung up before she could put a stop to it. He took the folder to the break room and spread it open. Contracts slid under his fingers like stiff, expensive snow. He moved between the Japanese and the English the way a boy moves across rocks in a stream, careful, quick, not always dry. He corrected the translator's notes quietly, adding only the simplest clarifications, flagging a few phrases that could be read 2 ways. At 9, In the hall outside HR, he saw the CFO belting her coat with the pleased air of a general who had just checked her troops. She saw him. Her face was a flicker of surprise that warmed into something far less mild. "Janitor," she said. A word. His name was on his badge. The way she avoided it was precision cruelty. He stopped. "What made you think," she said, stepping closer, her perfume like clean sheets on a deathbed, "that you could interrupt a meeting like that?" He opened his mouth. "I'll tell you," she said, not needing him. "Ambition, an inflated sense of your own usefulness. You embarrassed my team. You undermined my translator." "He wasn't yours," Noah said, her mouth thinned. "People like you are dangerous," she said. "You don't understand the architecture of rooms like that. You think because you can move a liner's worth of language from one shore to the other that you know what should be on the ship." He felt his legs go soft. He thought of telling her he knew how to move ships and babies and grief and that the only thing he had ever been good at was carrying what needed to be carried. He did not say it. "You'll be reassigned," she said. "I understand," he said. "You misunderstand," she said. "Not assigned, reassigned." A smile like cut paper. To nights. He had expected this. He felt something like relief because losing a day shift was not losing his job. He felt something like shame because it felt like something a man hides from his child. "Okay," he said. "Fine." She leaned in. "And you will stay out of rooms that do not belong to you." He did not say that all rooms belong to everyone if you can hear. He did not tell her about the first time he had stepped into a tea house engine and everything had been quiet and he had learned that quiet can be a kind of thunder. "What part of this do you think you have a right to?" she asked and did not wait for an answer. After she walked away, he put his forehead to the cool glass of the window and let himself breathe. Chapter 8, the rooftop at 11, the card in his pocket changed into a key, a message. Ollie, incorrigible and fierce, texted rooftop. Now, she's there. He took the service stairs because he needed to climb. The night air hit him with a slap. The rooftop was a long rectangle of gray with a waist-high wall and a tar smell that was almost sweet. The city stretched in lights. She stood at the edge, the wind lifting the hair from her neck. She did not turn when he came up. He pretended he had arrived in a movie, and this was the scene where we learned something essential about someone whose silence we have admired and misunderstood. "Thank you for the notes," she said when he stood beside her. "They were clear." "You already knew most of it," he said. "Yes," she said, "but there are fights one should not have alone." They stood without speaking. The city was a thing you can never fit in your hand. She said, "There was a boy who worked at my grandfather's factory. He came to work an hour early every day. One day my grandfather asked why. The boy said, because I like to see the machines wake up." He thought the old man would laugh. He did not. He said, "I too like to see this." He began to come early. They drank tea and watched the first belts move. That was how my grandfather learned to stop thinking of people as parts. Noah thought of watching elevators warm, of how the building changed temperature with the hours. "I am asking for help with precision," she said, "but I am also telling you something." She turned to him then, eyes dark in the rooftop lights. "You are good at what you do, both things. It is not a betrayal to be good at more than one thing." He had never considered that it could be a betrayal, and yet hadn't he treated it like one? Hadn't he left the Japanese parts of himself in a closet because he did not trust what would happen if he took them out? "My wife," he said, surprising himself with the present tense, "told me once that I was like water. That I become whatever shape I'm in, that it's a gift." He shook his head. "I got tired of being poured into other people's cups." "I understand," she said. He let the wind take that part of him and carry it away. She did not tell him her story in one monologue. She spoke in the pauses. He learned, piece by piece, about a brother she had lost when she was 22 in a car that did not stop. About a marriage that had been a merger and a kindness, neither of which had saved it. About the long year during which she had been called cold because she did not cry in public. About her mother's favorite poem and the way silence does work people cannot see. By the time he went back downstairs, he felt less like a janitor and more like a man who happened to clean floors. There's a difference. Chapter 9, Smoke. The revelation didn't announce itself like a drum. It drifted past like smoke. He had returned to the small conference room to finalize the last of the translations when he heard laughter in Japanese from around the corner. It was the thin translator, Ryo, and another voice Noah recognized with a start as the CFO. He paused, every muscle trained by years of caretaking to stillness. "We're aligned," the CFO was saying in English smooth as syrup. "Your phrasing was perfect, you smoothed it, that's your job." Ryo murmured something. Noah caught only a few words. "Wakure Mason, Gomen, Musukashiai." "I don't understand, sorry, it's difficult." "Don't be dramatic," she replied. "You're getting paid." A rustle, the small crackle of an envelope. Noah flinched as if the sound had reached inside him. "Keep it up and you'll have a full-time spot," she said. "Or don't. It's your choice, but don't mistake this for ethics, it's commerce." They moved on, voices fading, footsteps like dull drums. Noah stood in the hallway and went cold. He could have gone to HR, he could have gone to Danvers, he could have gone home. He went after Ryo, he found him in a stairwell, head in his hands, tie loosened. "Damn," Ryo said in English when he saw him. "You scared me." "I'm sorry," Noah said. He sat 2 steps down as if careful not to crowd him. "You okay?" Ryo laughed bitterly. "I translated market support as budget in $1 million negotiation. I am not okay." Noah considered the limits of kindness and the obligation of rigor. He said, "You were encouraged to do that." Ryo looked up sharply. The stairwell was dim. He was young enough for his face not to hide things well. Anger moved under his skin like a small animal. Then shame, then stubbornness. "You don't know me," he said. "I know Japanese," Noah said gently. "I know when someone translates to please rather than to carry." Ryo slumped. "I needed the money," he said in a rush. "My mother's in Saitama, my rent." He cut himself off with a violent wave. "No excuses, I messed up." "You compromised," Noah said. "That's different." Ryo's eyes flashed. "Only rich people say that." "Only practiced poor people know what it costs," Noah said. They sat in exhausted silence. In the city below, someone honked, and then another, the way a traffic jam has its own call and response. Ryo said quietly, "What should I do?" Noah thought of asking him to come clean. He thought of how that could ruin a life in the instant he could barely afford the rent. He thought of the difference between a person's single bad act and the architecture that asks them to commit it. "Do better," he said finally. "Tonight, tomorrow, start bringing what is said across exactly. It can't hurt you to do the job right." Ryo nodded miserably. "Okay." And Noah said, a new heat rising in him, "I'm going to give you something in return, a chance to do something that will make this right. You'll go to HR, you'll put the envelope on the desk and say you forgot to return petty cash. You'll say someone gave you money that belongs to the company and you want it recorded. You won't say who, not yet. You'll copy the serial numbers, you'll keep a record." Ryo stared. "You sound like a spy." "I'm a janitor," Noah said. "You hear everything." They exchanged numbers, they stood, they shook hands. The older man with a child and the younger man with a choice. Chapter 10. Birds of wire and paper. 2 days later, in a boardroom that always smelled faintly of invisible parameters, things began to break. The CFO was confident in a way that made Noah tired. The translator sat straighter than he had. The CEO was even quieter than before, as if she had found a way into stillness so deep it held up the room. Noah stood near the wall with a pad of paper, the extra translator but not the primary one. He had agreed to be that. He had insisted, in fact. He had no interest in replacing a man who could do the work if he was allowed to do it ethically. He was there as a witness, as insurance. The meeting started politely. The CFO talked about efficiencies, about the way supply chains shiver when touched. She used phrases like aligning incentives and synergy, the kinds of words that make the world smoother only by ignoring the bumps. When the CEO spoke, her questions were small and precise. She asked 6. Noah thought of a scalpel. He thought of Meyer asking why the moon followed them home. Ryo translated. He did not smooth, he did not protect. One sentence came out without emphasis but with clarity. "Will the people who make the parts be paid less than they are now?" The room paused. The CFO smiled too brightly. In English, she said, "The numbers will work themselves out." Ryo looked at Noah just for a second. Noah gave him nothing. He did not nod. He did not flinch. He was a wall. Ryo turned back and translated precisely. The CEO mouth did not move. She waited. Noah thought of her grandfather on a cold morning watching belts begin to turn. "We are proposing," the CFO said finally, "to engage a supplier who can meet the price points. That's my answer." "Is it the kind of supplier," the CEO said, still in Japanese, "who uses trainees as props? Who does not count sick days because they count only fingers?" Silence. Ryo swallowed, translated it. The room shifted. The CFO got brisk. "We're looking at numbers, Miss Takahashi, not folklore." "Numbers are stories people tell," the CEO said. "They have authors. My question was who pays for your alignment?" Danvers coughed. "Maybe we should answer," the CEO said softly. It was not a suggestion. The CFO phone buzzed then, a ridiculous human sound in a room of so much careful power. She glanced at it. She did not touch it. She said, "Can we take a pause?" "No," the CEO said. The door opened. HR walked in holding a sealed envelope. "So sorry to interrupt," she said, voice tremulous. "We found an item in the petty cash return that requires your sign-off, Miss Whittaker." The CFO went still. Noah felt something in the room tip like a glass set too close to the edge. "What item?" the CFO asked with a beautiful imitation of confusion. HR set the envelope on the table. Someone anonymous returned an amount that exactly matched a lunch line item from last week. I thought, "This is absurd," the CFO said. "Petty cash." Ryo made a sound that could have been a cough or a laugh. Noah forced his face not to move. The CEO reached for the envelope. She slid a nail under the seal. She did not unfold the flap, she lifted it. She took out the money. She stacked it, and her hands were so steady they could have held a gun. She counted it quietly. She placed it to the side. She said to HR, "Thank you." To the CFO, "Will you explain?" The CFO pupils were a fraction larger. "This is a misunderstanding. I authorized." "If you authorized," the CEO said, "it would be recorded. We would not require petty cash to return." Danvers cleared his throat like a man choking on an almond. "Stan Whitaker will remove himself," the CEO said. "How dare you?" the CFO breathed. "I dare," very quietly, the CEO said. "It would have been funny if it had not been lethal." And then, sudden, unexpected, they cut the CFO loose. Not theatrically, not with yelling, with a gentle, professional courtesy that made it more brutal. HR gave her a minute to pack the laptop. The CFO rose like a queen leaving a balcony. She did not look at Noah. She did not look at Ryo. She did not look at Eiko Takahashi, because people like her do not look at the person who sees them. Danvers watched the door close behind her and looked 10 years older. "I will need an interim CFO," he murmured. "You will need a moral inventory," the CEO said, too low for anyone but those closest to her to hear. Noah heard. He felt the answer in his bones. The building was shifting. Chapter 11, The Aftermath. They offered Noah a temporary contract the next day. "Cultural liaison," the HR woman said, eyes kind. "Language support, flexible hours." He took it. He expected to feel triumphant. He felt terrified. He felt as if he had crawled out on a branch and the tree had begun to slowly, silently grow. Ollie threw her arms around him in the hallway, fierce. "I knew it," she whispered. "I knew you were a spy." "I'm a janitor," he said into her hair. "Who speaks Japanese?" "Which is spy in a different alphabet," she declared. Rosa glared at him out of the corner of her eye and cried when no one was looking. He moved through the building with two toolkits, his bucket and his briefcase, his mop and his dictionary. He wore his uniform in the morning and a shirt in the afternoon. He was more tired than he had ever been, but the tired was the kind that felt like work rather than like sand. On his second day as liaison, he went to a meeting where one engineer said, "It's not my job to think about what happens in Yakechi," and the other engineer said in Japanese, too soft for the first to hear, "Then you have no job." Noah translated both. He watched a real conversation happen because people were brought into a room and asked to look at each other. He ran to pick up Maya late and found her on the playground with a teacher who had braided her hair into lopsided pigtails. "You were standing on a roof," she announced solemnly when he arrived. "Ollie sent me a picture with a heart emoji." He made a mental note to murder Ollie. "I was talking to the quiet lady who likes cranes," Maya said. "I know," he paused. "How do you like her?" Maya said, unfazed. "Not like, and she put out her hand, flat, wiggling it like a fish. "She's quiet like me when I draw." He saw himself in his daughter's eyes, seen and forgiven. On Friday, a small package arrived addressed to Reed/Maya. Inside was a book of Japanese folktales for children and a note in neat printed English for folding. "The paper is in the back, eh?" There was a single origami crane folded from paper with a design of tiny gold moons. He set it on the table and felt the room shift by a degree. The quiet CEO had sent a gift to his home. It was as if the world were whispering, "We see you." Chapter 12, The Bridge. It did not become easy. Nothing does. He woke at 3 to Maya's cough one night and had a breathless ride to the ER that smelled like bleach and fear. Her asthma was under control, but the scare left him shaky. He canceled a meeting. He sent an email that made him feel like a child asking not to be called on. He received a reply from Eiko Takahashi, "Take care of your daughter, we will continue." In Japanese, "Mata asu mo hai wa naboru." The sun rises tomorrow as well. Rosa came by with soup. Ollie made a paper crane so bad it looked like a squid, and Maya loved it as if it were a diamond. Noah took Maya to school the next morning and watched a man yell at an Uber driver from the curb and felt the world divide itself into those who knew how to carry their fear and those who spilled it like gasoline. He was halfway across the lobby at work when he saw a woman waiting with a duffel bag that had a tag from Haenda Airport. She stood small in the middle of the marble world. She looked lost. He walked to her. "Can I help you?" He asked in English, then in Japanese. Tetsude Masho ka, her head snapped up. She smiled like someone arriving at a harbor with no map. Suma Mason, she said. Watashi wa, Takahashi eiko no, jiri no haha. She hesitated over the words. Mother-in-law, he blinked. You mean, she nodded. Noa-san, her eyes were bright. Kanojo ga ita yo, she said you were kind. He felt the floor tilt. You're her. Her mouth curved. Mother, she clarified. She married once, then divorced. She has no children. You look like the way she described, someone who listens. He laughed because this was not the twist this story needed, and yet here it was. Their lives had become a gentle insert into each other's lists of people. He took the duffel. He guided the older woman through the security gate. He texted Eiko. Together, the three of them sat in the break room eating almonds from the vending machine because grief and honorably worrying had the same flavor. The mother told him stories about Eiko as a child, about the factory and the belts and the way her father loved the machines because they were honest. She asked him questions about the daughter who folded cranes and spoke English dreams. She asked him if he had loved his wife. He said yes. He said yes twice. He said yes again, because sometimes the most important thing in this world is to say the yes that holds the shape of your life. The shock that had begun with a janitor speaking Japanese in a boardroom rippled through the building for weeks. People began to speak more carefully in meetings, not less bravely, more carefully. They asked who would pay when efficiencies were achieved. They asked why. They asked in English and in Japanese, and once in Spanish, and then in a frantic whisper to Noah at a coffee machine in Arabic. The building changed temperature. By spring, the cranes in Noah's apartment had reached 300. Maya kept count with a solemnity that did not quite hide the joy. They went to the park one Sunday with a bag full of birds and left them on benches with small notes that said "Keep going" in English and "Ganbat" in Japanese and "Sigamos" in Spanish, and the pigeons looked deeply offended by the competition. He took calls about the Tokyo office and translated for a man who was too proud to say he didn't understand and for a woman who understood too much and didn't know which part to say first. He learned to make his mouth a tool that did not own the ideas it carried. He learned to be a bridge with railings. At the end of summer, Eiko Takahashi called him into her office. She closed the door. She did not sit. I'm going to Japan for 2 months, she said. My mother is ill. I'm sorry, he said. He meant I understand. He waited for what would come next. I would like you to come for the first 2 weeks, she said. We need to talk with the factory. There are negotiations that require honesty. I would like someone there who understands what the words cost. He wanted to say yes. He wanted to say no. He thought of planes. He thought of his heart moving back across the ocean 1 pound of flesh at a time. He thought of Maya pressing her face to the window at the airport, of how airports are excruciating for people who have lost someone. I can't leave my daughter that long, he said. I'm sorry. She stood very still. I thought you might say that, she said. I respect it. She reached into a drawer. She pulled out an envelope thick and old. Then I will give you this. It was meant for you. I have been selfish in waiting. He took it. The paper felt like the past. He looked at the return address. Kyoto, the name beneath it, his mother-in-law's. He nearly dropped it. She wrote to you, Eiko said. I found it when we were packing my father's things. She thought perhaps she had no right to intrude on your widowhood. We all become shy when we should not. We use quiet as a disguise for fear. I held this a while because I wanted to bring it to you by hand. Forgive me for waiting. He slid a fingernail under the flap. He did not open it. He closed his eyes. He spoke the old words in his head not because he had to, but because language was the muscles warming before a race. Suma Mason. Thank you. I am not ready. Okay. You can open it when you're home, she said, or burn it, or put it under your pillow and wait. I think waiting can be kind sometimes. He went home with the envelope in his jacket. Maya fell asleep on his lap with a half-folded crane in her hand. He sat in the dim light and opened the letter. It was in Japanese. It was simple. It said, My son, I know this is presumptuous. You are not my son, but when you hold my daughter's daughter, you are the only son I will ever have. If you come back, I will make you miso and cry a little, and we will pick a day to go to the shrine. If you do not, I will not blame you. I will put a crane in the window sometimes and think of you. People say grief is a river, but I think it is a bridge. You go over it. It swings. You do not know if it will hold, and then you are on the other side with the people who kept you. Please tell Myra a story about her mother sometimes, even when it is hard, especially then. With love, Kay, he cried then. He put his forehead to the letter and felt the past press to the present like 2 hands on either side of a glass. He folded the letter again and tucked it under Maya's pillow. He felt the cartilage of his life change. The next morning, he went to work and found a thank you on his desk from the Tokyo team. written in a combination of languages that would have been embarrassing if it had not been so endearing. Ollie had drawn a doodle of him with a mop and a katana. Rosa had left a Tupperware of flan. He was late to a meeting. He walked fast, rounded the corner, and nearly collided with Eiko Takahashi. She steadied him with a hand against his arm. They both stepped back. "Sorry," he said. "You should walk like a bridge," she murmured, amusement in her tone. "There is dignity in taking up the space you require," he grinned. "I'll practice." She said, "When I return, we will speak again of the factories." He said, "I'll be here." He did not know that the next twist would come after she left. It came like this. Stan Whitaker, who had stood very still while a woman was cut from her role and then begun to move again like a man on a cruise ship who cannot smell the smoke, got bold. He proposed a deal that was a clone of the bad one, made with a different man and a different set of lunches. He went around the CEO. He went to the board. He had not counted on bridges. The call came to Noah because one of the board members was the son of the factory foreman in Kyoto and had grown up translating his father's life to his mother. He listened to Noah and he asked, "Would you be willing to speak to my father?" In Noah's mind, two solids touched, his wife's mother's letter and the face of a man who had watched Belt's wake. He said yes. He spoke carefully. He explained that people are not numbers, but the machines of the world nonetheless count them. By the time Eiko returned, the board had thrown out Stan's proposal with a quiet that was deadly. He resigned. He did not look at the janitor, who had become a liaison, who had become a bridge. He did not look at Eiko, who was a woman who understood how to dare quietly. Chapter 13, The Last Polish on a Saturday, Eiko Takahashi came to the park with a paper bag. She sat on a bench. She wore no suit. She wore a sweater the color of the inside of an apricot. She waited. Noah arrived with Maya, who carried a shoebox full of cranes. Rosa came with flan. She insisted on calling from my friend. Ollie bounced in with a notebook for autographs and then pretended it wasn't for that. Ryo drifted by later, hovering at the edge as if forgiveness required distance. They folded cranes on the bench. Eiko's hands were precise, practiced. She taught Myra a trick to make the beak open and close. They made 100 between them, maybe more. They strung them on threads like prayers. The sun slid behind a building. The park shifted. Eiko stood. She handed the paper bag to Maya. Inside was a small wooden plaque with a hole at the top and a brush. "This is called an ima," she said. "In Japan we write wishes on them and hang them at the shrine. We will make a city shrine." They tied the plaque to the low branch of a maple. On it, in careful letters, they wrote, "For the people who make things, for those who carry words, for fathers, for mothers, for quiet." For long, people stopped and looked. A child asked if she could hang her own. A man removed his hat. A woman took a picture and then put her phone away and cried a little. The city made room for a small wooden wish. When they were done, when the park had begun to empty and the cranes had been left for the pigeons to envy, Eiko turned to Noah and said only, "It is good to have you at the building." He knew then that it had never been about a job. It had been about a way of being in the world. The job was the place where the way could be practiced. He took the long way home with Maya because some nights the long way is the right way. They stopped at the bakery. They bought Croyce rabbits. They ate them on the stairs. He told her a story about Lena, about how she had once gotten lost in Kyoto on purpose because she liked the feeling of the city giving her back to herself. When he put Maya to bed, she wrapped a crane in her hand and said, "How many are we at now?" 642, he said. "Approximately." "What happens at 1,000? She asked, eyes heavy. He touched his fingers to her forehead. "We find out." He cleaned their kitchen the way he cleaned the marble floors, slowly, with respect. He ran the cloth along the counter and saw stars. He thought that perhaps there is magic in the ordinary after all if you make a practice of showing up for it. He did not become a different man. He became more himself. He kept his mop. He kept his daughter. He kept his quiet. He spoke Japanese when it was called for and English when that was England enough and silence when it was the right shape. He carried things across. He carried his own heart carefully. It had to last. Epilogue, the unforgettable part years later when people told the story, they made it shorter because time does that. They said a single dad janitor was cleaning floors, then spoke Japanese to the quiet CEO and shocked everyone. They said the CFO got fired. They said the janitor helps run the company now. They left out the cranes. They left out the letter. They left out the way the CEO had taken her mother's hand in a hospital and breathed in time with her for an hour because that is all you can do in some rooms. They left out the flan. They left out Ollie's bad squid. They left out a girl's small, determined voice asking her father if the stars were shy. They left out the way he answered yes, because he had learned that some truths are not less true for being pretty. What they should have kept, The image of the quiet CEO standing in a boardroom like winter water and asking the question that mattered. What they should have kept. A janitor in a threadbare shirt saying "Suma Mason" and correcting a word with a gentleness that was its own kind of rebellion. What they should have kept. The idea that most of the world is made of people who carry things across, bread, babies, budgets, birds of paper and wire and hope, and that if you speak the right language to them, they will show you where the stars are hidden in the floor. On the day they made the 1,000th crane, it was raining. They hung it in the window anyway. The paper went a little soft. The light caught it just so. It looked like a star. Noah stood in his kitchen with a dish towel in his hand, the smell of lemon and sugar in the air, and thought, I am already somewhere else. Outside, the city took a breath. Inside, a father and a daughter ate Croyce rabbits and laughed. In an office made of glass, a woman wrote a letter by hand and sealed it with a small nod, not because she had to, but because it mattered. In Kyoto, a widow looked up and saw a crane flicker past the window in the reflection of an old TV and put her hand flat against the glass. Across it all, across the white tiled rooms and the polished marble lobbies and the factory floors that shook like living things, there was the sound of a bridge holding. Quiet. Unshowy. Sure, you could walk across it with your eyes closed and still find your way home.